Hello everyone and welcome to Beginner's Code. Today we are going to learn how we can use Flask logic, object-oriented programming, AJAX and JavaScript to save user data from input fields and output a chart based on the content. Okay, so I have created a folder called Sales Dashboard and I've opened it in my Visual Studio Code and also in my terminal. So what we're going to do is just create a virtual environment. So we'll say Python 3-m env and then my-env, and this will allow us to just install the packages that we need just inside this environment. So we're going to activate it by source my-env bin activate, and then we're just going to pip3 install Flask. And whilst that's happening, if we come back over here and we sort out our templates, well, our structure, so the first thing we'll do is create a folder called templates and then a folder called static. And then inside the templates, we'll have an index.html. And then inside the static, we will have a script.js. And then in the root folder, so inside this sales dashboard, we will create a models.py and then an app.py. Okay, so if we come back over to here and just make sure that everything has installed correctly. So now what we want to actually do is just get the development server up and running. So if we start with our app.py, which is where we're going to hold the majority of our logic, we say from Flask, import Flask, render template, request and JSONify. And then we'll just say app is equal to Flask. And then we'll create a decorator for the root, and this will just be the index, and inside this we're just going to return render template and then index.html, and then at the bottom we'll just say if name is equal to main, then we will say app.run and we'll pass in debug true just in case we come into any errors. And now inside our index.html, if we just create a heading1 tag, we'll just say hello world. And then if we come back over to here and we say Python 3 app.py, we now have a development server up and running. So if we take this and then open Google Chrome, we have our development server running and our hello world printed out. So if we remove this and we'll start with the template, we'll just create a HTML5 template. We are going to install a couple of things. So we'll just have the title as Sales Dashboard. Next we will look at using Tailwind. So we're actually going to create a link, and this is going to be a CDN for Tailwind. So we'll say https cdn.js deliver.net /npm Tailwind CSS, and we want the 2.2.19, and then we want the Tailwind minified CSS file. Next we also want to include jQuery, so we'll use a script tag, and inside the source we will say https and then ajax.googleapis.com /ajax/libs jQuery, and we'll get 3.5.1 and again the minified version. So next we need to actually include another JavaScript library which is going to be used for the handling of the charts. So we'll say script, and then inside the source we are going to do https cdn.js deliver. Just realised there's no E there. jsdeliver.net /npm /chart.js, and then we will also link to our script file that we have up here, and to do this we will use the Ginger syntaxing, and we'll say url4 static, and then file name is equal to script.js, And now if we have a heading 1 that has a class of text red, I hope that works, and we'll say text to Excel, and then if we come over to here and we say document ready, pass in the function that we're going to be using, which is actually just the document ready function, and then here we'll just say console log hello. So now if we come back over to Google Chrome and refresh, we actually don't see any output. It's because there's nothing inside the heading 1, so we'll pass in hello world again and refresh. So we have Tailwind installed, text red isn't working, but text to Excel is. So we can remove that. And now if we check the console, we have a hello outputted, so we know the jQuery is working and the JavaScript's both working. Okay, so now we are going to focus on our models, and this is going to be the classes or the objects that we are using to track the sales and then to output. So we'll say class sale, and we'll say def init, we'll pass in self, a sale ID, because obviously we need to know which ID that sale has. We'll say item, which will just be a name, and then an amount, which will be the number. So we'll say self.saleID is equal to sale ID, self.item is equal to item, and self.amount is equal to amount. So now we just want to actually have a function that will return the data but as a dictionary. So we'll say def to dict and pass in self so that we can actually access these attributes up here. And here we'll just say return, and then inside of this we'll say sale ID will be self.saleID, and then item will be self.item, and then amount will be self.amount. Okay, so that is the actual sale sorted. We now need a sales tracker that will just essentially track the amount of sales that have been made. So we'll say class sales tracker, and we need to create an initialization method, which is going to obviously need self. And then we will be saving to a external file that will be held within this folder. So we'll say self, and then file name is equal to sales.json. And then here we are just going to say self.filename is equal to file name, and self.sales is equal to self.loadSales. So this is going to be a function that's called when we first initialize, but we haven't obviously made that function. So we'll say def load sales, pass in self, and then here we're going to say if os.path.exists, and then self.filename. So because we're using the OS module, we need to import it. So we'll say import OS. And then here we're just going to say with open self.filename, and then we're going to pass in read, and we'll say as f so that we can use the f alias, and we'll say sales underscore data is equal to json.load, and then we'll pass in the file, and because we're using JSON we need to import JSON. And then here we're just going to say return string of s, but for the sale ID, and then we'll say sale, pass in keyword args of the actual sale for s in sales data. So this is going to loop through the sales data, and it's going to get the sale ID for each sale and pass in the object of this specific sale that we're actually using. And then here if it's not, then we're just going to return an empty dictionary. So now we need to create a way to save sales. So we'll say def save sales, pass in self. We'll say with open self.file name, and then we'll use the w method for writing, and then give it an alias of f again, and we'll say json.dump, and then we'll say s.toDict. So that's the function that we made above, and then we'll say for s in self.sales.values. So this is just going to be the sales that we've actually made. We are looping through and we're returning them all to dictionary. And then we will pass in f as well. So we're dumping that to the file. So now we need a way to add sales. So we'll say def add sales, pass in self and then a sale. And then inside of this, we are just going to say self.sales, and then at the index of the sale ID. So the sale object that we're passing in, we are going to say self.sales at that ID. And then we're just going to set it equal to the sale. And we'll say self.save sales, and we'll pass in nothing. We don't actually need to pass anything in because we are using that there. And now we want a way to get all the sales that we have made. So we'll say def get all sales, pass in self, and we're just going to return a list of sale.toDict, and then we'll say for sale in self.sales.values, and that just means that we're going to loop through the sales values. So this dictionary, we're going to loop through that, and we are just going to return a list of them all as dictionaries. So that is the models sorted. If we come over to our app.py, we can actually start working on the logic. So up here, we need to obviously import the models. So we'll say from models, import sale and sales tracker. And then under the app, we're going to say sales tracker is equal to sales tracker. Now the index route, so the home route, is actually okay to leave as it is, but we need to create two routes, one for the add sale and one for the sales data. So we'll say app.route add sale method will pass in as post. And we're just going to say def add sale, and we'll say data is equal to request.json, and then we'll say sale is equal to an instance of sale and then the data that's being passed through. So we'll say data sale ID, data item, and then data amount. And then here we're just going to say sales tracker dot add sale, and then pass in the sale that we have just created here from the inputted data that will be in the form in the index.html file. And now we're just going to return JSONify a status which just says sale added. And now we'll create a new route, so app.route /sales data. And this is going to be used to actually get the data so that we can pass it to the Chart.js. And then in here we're just going to say def sales data, and we'll create a new variable called sales. We'll set that equal to sales tracker.get all sales, and then we're just going to return JSONify the sales variable that we have got here, because it's going to be returned as a list of dictionaries. So this will be able to be passed to JSON. So now if we come over to our index.html file, we can actually start sorting out the layout. So we'll give the body a class. We'll say bg gray 100 and padding of 6. And then we're just going to create a container. So we'll say div container with a margin of auto, and then px4, but for extra large screens, we'll say px0. We'll move this up inside of the container, and then we can remove the hello world and we'll say sales dashboard. And then here we're just going to create a div which is grid with grid cols 2. And then inside of this we're going to have one that's a col span 1, which is the form for the data that's going to be passed in to this. So we'll say in here div col span 1 mx auto bg white, padding of 1.5 rems, and then medium rounded, medium shadow, and then a margin bottom of 1.5 rems. And here we're just going to say heading 2 of text 2XL, font semi-bold, margin bottom of 1 rem. We're just going to say add sale. And then here we will say an input type of text. The ID will be sale ID, and we can remove the name. We'll give it a placeholder of sale ID, and then a class of border, padding 0.5 rem, width full, and margin of half a rem. Now, if we copy and paste this twice, we can then remove this and make this the item. So we'll say item name, and then we'll change this one to amount. And now if we come to the bottom of that, we can then add a button, and the class will be bg blue 500, text white, padding top and bottom of 0.5 rem, padding left and right of 1 rem, and rounded, and we'll say add sale. And now we want to give it an ID just so that we actually are able to target this properly using jQuery. So we'll say add sale. And now for the right hand side of the screen, we are going to create a canvas that will output the chart. So we'll say div col span 1, margin left and right of auto, background white, padding of 1.5 rems, rounded MD, shadow MD, and then margin bottom of 1.5 rems. And then inside this we'll create a heading 2 which has text 2XL, font semi-bold, and then a margin bottom of 1 rem. And we'll just say sales data. And then here we'll create a button that has an ID of view sales, and then a class of bg indigo 500, text white, top and bottom padding of 0.5 rem, and then top and right and left padding of 1 rem, and then we'll just say rounded. And here we'll say view sales chart, and then we'll create a canvas which has an ID of sales chart, and then we'll give it a width of 400 and a height of 200. So that is the layout for the HTML. So if we come over to our scripts, and we can remove the console log, we'll just make sure that everything is outputting correctly. So we have an error. .py line 12. Right, so the issue is because it says method. So if you come down here, it says type in it, got a unexpected keyword argument of method. it's actually meant to be methods. So if we save that and then come back to here, try again, we now have the development server up and running. So if we refresh this, we have left and right the form for our sales and then the chart for our sales data. I'm just going to make this more centralized. So we'll say text center and then margin bottom of 4. So now we have it a little bit more even. So if we come back over to our scripts, and then inside of this, we are going to target the add sale. So we'll say add sale, and we're going to give it an event listener. So we'll say dot on click, and then we're going to pass in a function. So when the add sale button is clicked, we're going to get the sale ID value, the item value, and the amount value. So we say var sale ID, and then here we'll just say sale underscore ID dot val, and then var item, and then the item val, and then amount, the ID dot val, and that needs a t. So now we have these 3 variables. We can actually use an AJAX request to pass them to our add sale route. So we'll say $.ajax, and then inside of this, we'll say URL add underscore sale, and then type post, and then we'll say data JSON.stringify, and we'll say sale ID, and then sale ID, item, and amount. So this will just return a string of this JSON variable. And then we'll say success, need a comma there, success function, which will require a response. And we'll just say alert response.status. So this is going to be the JSON variable that we are returning here. So if you want to obviously add in an error message or change the status to be completed, then you can. So now if we actually add a sale, so if we come back and just refresh, make sure that everything's lined up, say ID of 1, say a car, and then 15,000, and we'll add the sale. We seem to have an error. Unsupported media type. So if here we need content type, so we'll say content type application /JSON. And now if I come back and refresh, car 15,000, 500 internal server error. Sales tracker has no attribute add sale. Add sales, that's why. So here we need to add an S, and then if I come back, and because it's the Python, we don't actually need to update it because it's working in the back end. So if I press add sale, we have the sale added. And now if I come back to here, we have a file also added called sales.json, which holds the data that we need. So now if we come back to Google Chrome and close this, actually no, we come back to our scripts. We now need to start working on the chart. So now if we target the view sales button that we created, we'll say on click, and then we'll pass in a function to this. So here we're just going to create a AJAX call, and we'll say URL /sales data, and then we'll say type is get, and we're going to say the success function, pass in data, And now inside of this, we are going to get the context for the canvas, and we'll start using the data that is passed back to output an actual chart. So we say var context is equal to document.getElement by ID, and we'll pass in sales chart, and then we're going to use get context for 2D. We say var labels is equal to data.map, and then we'll say sale.item, and then var amounts is equal to data.map sale.amount. So this is just going to map through the data that we have and find any sales and get the sale item and label and put that into the labels, and then do the same for amount. Now here we want to create a new chart, so we'll say new chart, pass in CTX, and then a JSON attribute. We'll say data, and then here we're just going to say type for bar, data sets. We're going to create a list of JSON objects. So here we'll say label sales amount, data amounts, background color, we'll put in a RGBA, and we'll say 75, 192, 192, 0.2. Border color, we'll set that to the same, but this time we will say opacity of 1, and then we're going to say border width will be 1, and now we will say options, and this is going to be a JSON variable again which has scales, and then y we'll just say begin at 0, true. So now we have our chart layout sorted. If we come back over to Google Chrome and refresh, now if we press view chart sales, we should get something. If I inspect, so the type bar is actually meant to be outside of data, and then in here we will say labels, and we'll set that to labels. So that's the labels that we've got up here. So now, because this was showing undefined, hopefully this will actually fix this. Okay, so we have a chart outputted which shows the one car being 15,000 sales amount. So now if I add sale ID 2, and we'll say a wheel, and we'll say this just costs 300, and we add this, now we'll have to refresh because we haven't put in anything to destroy the chart. But if you want to, you're more than welcome to. So now if we press view sales, we have the wheel showing next to the car. And if we just add a third item, and then we'll say steering wheel, and this will be 120 quid. And then we refresh and view the sales chart, and we have 3 different things outputted, all inside of the chart. Hopefully this has helped you grasp how we can use object-oriented programming in AJAX to save user data from a front end to an external file and output the data in an easier way to visualize it. If you learned something today, please hit that like button and make sure you subscribe to see new videos coming. Thanks, and I'll see you again soon.